This analysis focuses on 3 Japanese films from the late 1990s and early 2000s. Noriko's Dinner Table, directed by Sion Sono in 2005. All About Lily Chocho, directed by Shunji Iwai in 2001. And Love and Pop, directed by Hideaki Anno in 1998. All of these films address, from different perspectives, the breakdown of the family institution, the dangers of the digital age, and the impact of pop culture on teenagers immersed in a confusing, contradictory, and violent reality. The choice of these works, while not accidental because they present concrete examples of the problems I want to address, is not intended to focus solely on how this affects Japanese society. It is not a commentary on Japanese culture because our reality ceased to be unique a long time ago. The problems we face in Latin America, Europe, or Asia in relation to postmodernity are not very different. Globalization and neoliberal policies have transformed most of the world's inhabitants into precarious and exploited proletarians. Capitalism unites us all as oppressed. In this context, it doesn't matter if we are talking about Argentina or Japan. The only thing that changes is how we interpret these conditions of oppression in relation to our culture. This film introduces us to Noriko, a teenager from rural Japan who watches her family disintegrate due to a lack of communication and emotional repression. Her father is a frustrated journalist who imposes rigid control in the home, while her mother plays a passive role. Seeking an escape, Noriko connects with a girl named Ueno Station 54 through social media. This person introduces her to a cult that promises many people in Noriko's situation a refuge where they can find an alternative family. This highlights how traditional families can fail as an institution by not offering an emotional connection between their members. The film suggests that the dogmas of the conservative family institution, due to their rigidity, fail to adapt to the needs of a constantly changing world. In this case, unlike the previous one, the idea of family is almost non-existent. While Noriko could depend to some extent on a family institution that was flawed by being dysfunctional, Yuichi, the protagonist of All About Lily Chocho, cannot count on it. Here, we follow the life of a young man whose mother doesn't understand his social isolation and his obsession with a singer named Lily Chocho. His father, on the other hand, doesn't even acknowledge his existence. Here, the story explores how the absence of paternal figures in early development pushes teenagers to seek refuge in digital subcultures or toxic relationships, such as school gangs. The family here, instead of being a fundamental pillar for personal development, is a void that leads to alienation. Hideaki Anno's work presents family life as an illusion. Hiromi, the protagonist of this story, lives in a seemingly stable and comfortable family environment. But it is merely illusory. Her emotionally distant parents are unaware of her activities, such as enjokosai, a Japanese term that translates as compensated dating, a practice in which adult men give gifts or financial incentives to young girls in exchange for sexual favors. In this situation, the motivations of this young woman, who is completely disconnected from her family environment, are driven by consumerist desires. The family here is not presented as a space for dialogue, and it is even worse than in the previous film, because it is simply a backdrop that offers no guidance, leaving Hiromi at the mercy of social and economic dynamics she does not understand. The three films show that the family, whether due to authoritarianism, disconnection, or indifference, fails to fulfill its role in society, leaving adolescents vulnerable to external influences that can affect them physically, socially, and psychologically. These problems are exacerbated by the role that digital interactions play in the lives of these young people. In Noriko's dinner table, digital media is presented as ambivalent. The protagonist connects with an online community that seduces her with a promise of belonging, but in reality, this community turns out to be a manipulative cult. The internet, in this case, is presented as a medium that amplifies her disconnection from reality, offering her a false sense of freedom while exposing her to predatory dynamics. The film highlights how technology, in certain cases, can exploit adolescent loneliness. In Lily Chochu, social media is a crucial part of the narrative. Online forums dedicated to the singer serve as a refuge for alienated teenagers like Yuichi. However, these spaces also end up reflecting the cruelty of real life through cyberbullying and aggression, turning them into environments of violence as well. The reliance on digital media to process reality also contributes to the protagonist's disconnection, as he is unable to find real connections in the physical world. Love and Pop doesn't draw so much attention to technology, at least not explicitly. Subtly, mobile phones, pages, and digital cameras play an important role in the protagonist's loss of identity, and in turn, facilitate Hiromi's connection with her clients in the sex trade. What is highlighted here is how modern technology, in terms of communication and social interaction, is a double-edged sword, because it exposes teenagers to dangerous social dynamics within a closed communication network to which adults cannot have access. The same technologies that connect Hiromi with her family and friends are also the ones that protect the identities of her clients. The three works warn about the ambiguous nature of technology. Sometimes it is a space for escape, other times for expression. But it is also a terrain where adolescents and children are vulnerable to exploitation, manipulation, and emotional disconnection. In Science Sono's work, confusion arises from the idealization of Tokyo as a space of freedom. However, this fantasy clashes with the violent and erratic reality of the cult that Noriko joins. With the dehumanization suffered by the members of this sect, and the physical and psychological violence to which she is subjected, the protagonist loses herself in false identities, unable to find one that fits her reality. Shunji Iwai, on the other hand, presents pop culture as a significant factor in the alienation process of his protagonist. The music of Lily Chochu an ethereal pop figure, is a refuge for his protagonist, but also an obsession that further isolates him from the world. The school violence he suffers, and in which he also participates, contrasts with his idealization of this media figure, showing how the desire for escapism among teenagers facing a reality they don't understand can increase their disconnection from it. The story developed by Hideaki Anno, on the other hand, addresses pop culture in a more subtle way, not so much through its direct influence, but through its effects. The film emphasizes the consumerist desires of its protagonist, although ideas related to commerce, brands, and trends are developed in the background. Hiromi is driven solely by her consumerist desires. Her foray into the world of prostitution stems from her artificial need to obtain quick money to buy things she doesn't need. The film doesn't dedicate a single word to this commentary because it's unnecessary. The city itself tells us enough. The neon signs of Tokyo, the saturation of pop images interspersed with advertisements, the men who approach the protagonist and her friends on the street. This is all Hiromi knows. And she only knows how to reproduce the language of consumerism, due to the absence of a family to provide her with emotional support. Pop culture and its relationship with commercial culture constantly bombard us with images and promises of happiness that are completely artificial. And for those who lack the necessary tools to interpret their reality and see beyond the emptiness projected by these ideas, it is these ideas that construct the meaning of the world. Throughout the three films, it is also shown how this family disconnection can not only blind us to the imposition of market culture, but also prevent us from interpreting how violence and power dynamics unfold in the real world. This situation leads us to take refuge in self-destructive behaviors that only exacerbate our alienation. In the reality these works denounce, adolescents are trapped in a world where family is devoid of meaning. Technology is presented as a refuge that requires sacrificing privacy, and commercial culture assumes the role of educator, bombarding individuals with contradictory messages. Family breakdown leads to this search for meaning in digital media, which they discover can also be breeding grounds for new forms of violence and exploitation. In this context, the digital age, far from representing liberation and a way to connect with others, becomes a mirror reflecting insecurities, distorting reality. Unable to process the chaos and violence that surrounds them, adolescents unconsciously reproduce behaviors that lead them to seek the connection they lack with their families. These films are over 20 years old, but they are urgently relevant because after the expansion of mass media, the rise of social networks, and the emergence of a new type of fascism led by the alt-right, they provide much-needed interpretive resources for navigating the violent and contradictory reality we face.